Have you ever watched a perfectly healthy plant cutting slowly turn to mush in a glass of water, leaving you frustrated and confused? Today, we are going to change everything you know about plant propagation. I am going to show you how certain cuttings can push out thick, healthy roots almost instantly. And no, you do not need to run to the store to buy expensive, toxic, chemical rooting powders. The promise I am making you today is simple. By the end of this video, you will know the exact natural household ingredients that force explosive root growth. Here's a little paradox to get us started. Did you know that the very water you use to keep your cutting alive might be the exact thing slowing down its growth? It is completely true. We are going to reveal the totally non-obvious secrets hiding in your kitchen and medicine cabinet right now. I am talking about everyday items that secretly contain powerful plant hormones. I want to know right now, what is the most difficult plant you've ever tried to root? Tell me down in the comments, and let us see if we can solve it together. Keep watching, because the truth about rapid rooting is about to be exposed. Before we get to the actual ingredients, let us establish some quick context. For centuries, gardeners and botanists have been trying to figure out how plants regenerate. When you take a cutting, you are essentially asking a severed limb to grow an entirely new digestive system. It is a massive biological trauma for the plant. In nature, plants drop branches that eventually root in the damp forest floor. They do this through natural chemical signals called auxins. Auxins are hormones produced in the tips of the leaves that travel down the stem, telling the cells at the bottom to stop being stem cells and start being root cells. In the mid-20th century, scientists figured out how to synthesize these hormones in laboratories, creating the white rooting powders we see today. But long before laboratories existed, ancient farmers and indigenous cultures had already discovered natural sources of these exact same growth hormones. They knew which plants helped other plants grow, and they used natural antibacterial agents to stop rot before it started. What we are doing today is returning to those incredibly effective traditional roots, but with a clear understanding of the science behind why they actually work. So, let us get right into it. Let us dive right into the main secret. What is this magic ingredient that makes roots explode overnight? It is actually a combination of two things you probably have in your kitchen right now. I am talking about fresh aloe vera gel and ground cinnamon. Now, you might be wondering why these two are so special. Aloe vera is packed with natural rooting hormones, enzymes, and vitamins that stimulate cell division in the plant stem. Cinnamon, on the other hand, is nature's ultimate antifungal powder. When you take a fresh cutting, it is basically an open wound. If you stick it directly into water or soil, bacteria can attack it, causing stem rot. But when you dip the end in aloe vera and then coat it with a light layer of cinnamon, you create a protective, hormone-rich shield. Let me give you a quick illustration. Imagine a dying pothos vine. You cut it into pieces, hoping to save it. If you put half in plain water and half dipped in this aloe and cinnamon mix, the difference is night and day. The treated cuttings will push out thick, white roots days before the plain ones even show a single bump. It is like giving your plant a custom-made suit of armor that also feeds it. A lot of people believe the myth that you have to buy expensive chemical rooting powders from the garden center. But nature has already provided everything we need to succeed. So, next time you take a cutting, raid your kitchen cabinet first. Moving on to our next incredibly powerful natural method, we have to talk about something known in gardening circles as willow water. If you want a zero-cost, highly effective rooting hormone, this is it. Willow trees contain high amounts of two crucial substances. These are salicylic acid and indolebutyric acid. Indolebutyric acid is exactly what manufacturers put into commercial rooting hormones. Salicylic acid helps the plant fight off stress and infections. To make this magic potion, you simply collect young, green willow twigs, chop them into small pieces, and steep them in boiling water for 24 hours. Then, you strain the liquid and use it to water your cuttings or soak them. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you have a beautiful, rare ficus branch that you are terrified of losing. Instead of using plain tap water, you place the cutting into a jar filled with your homemade willow water. Because the willow tree naturally grows roots so aggressively, it passes that exact same energy and chemical signal straight into your ficus. You are essentially borrowing the biological superpower of a completely different tree. It is a fantastic way to recycle nature's own resources. We often think that complex problems require complex, expensive solutions. But the truth is, the oldest tricks are usually the best ones. Willow water has been used for generations, long before chemical alternatives even existed. Now, let us open this pantry and look at another golden secret. I am talking about raw natural honey. You might be thinking that putting sugar on a plant cutting sounds like a recipe for a sticky disaster. That is actually a very common myth. People assume the sugar will just attract mold and ants. But raw honey is naturally antibacterial and antifungal. It contains enzymes that gently encourage growth while keeping rot completely away from the vulnerable stem. Let us look at a classic example. Rose cuttings are notoriously difficult to root. They love to turn black and die before they ever push out a single root. But if you take a fresh rose stem, lightly scrape the bottom inch, and dip it directly into raw honey, before planting it in your soil mix, the survival rate skyrockets. The honey forms an airtight, sterile barrier around the cut. It seals in the plant's natural moisture while blocking out soil-borne pathogens. The cutting can then focus all of its internal energy on generating new roots instead of fighting off microscopic enemies. It is very important to use raw, unpasteurized honey for this to work properly. The highly processed honey in the little plastic bears usually has the beneficial enzymes boiled right out of it. So treat your precious cuttings to the good stuff. It is a sweet, simple, and completely organic way to guarantee a successful propagation. But what if you do not have access to a willow tree? Do not worry, because we have a modern shortcut that works on the exact same scientific principle. You just need to grab a bottle of plain, uncoated aspirin from your medicine cabinet. Remember how we talked about salicylic acid in willow trees? Well, aspirin is acetylsalicylic acid, which is incredibly similar. When a plant experiences stress, like being chopped off from its mother, it naturally produces salicylic acid to trigger its immune system. By dissolving one regular aspirin tablet in a gallon of water, you are giving the cutting a massive immune boost. Let us imagine you are trying to root a batch of tomato side shoots. Tomatoes generally root easily, but sometimes they sulk or droop heavily when first cut. If you soak those tomato cuttings in your aspirin water for a few hours before planting, you will notice something amazing. They stay rigid, green, and perky. The aspirin tricks the plant into activating its defense mechanisms, which includes rapid root growth to establish itself quickly. It is an amazing biohack. Let us debunk a quick myth here. More is not better. If you use too much aspirin, you will actually burn the delicate plant tissues. 1 tablet per gallon is the golden ratio. It is a cheap, reliable trick that professional nurseries have secretly used for decades to keep their delicate clones alive and thriving. Let us shift our focus to the environment where these roots are actually going to grow. We need to settle the great debate between water propagation and soil propagation. A lot of beginners think that if they just leave a cutting in a glass of water forever, it will eventually turn into a strong plant. But there is a massive difference between water roots and soil roots. Water roots are thick, brittle, and designed to pull oxygen directly from a liquid environment. Soil roots are fine, fibrous, and built to push through dirt to find moisture. If you leave a cutting in water for too long, the transition to soil becomes incredibly dangerous for the plant. Here is a perfect illustration. Imagine you have a beautiful string of hearts plant rooting in a glass. The roots are 3 inches long. If you suddenly shove that into dry, dense potting soil, those delicate water roots will suffocate and rot. The plant will collapse. The trick is to wait until the water roots are only 1 or 2 inches long and then move them to a light, airy soil mix containing lots of perlite. Perlite creates tiny air pockets in the soil. Roots need oxygen just as much as they need water. The biggest myth in propagation is that water is the only thing that matters. In reality, oxygen is the invisible hero that actually allows the newly formed roots to breathe, expand, and establish a permanent foundation. Here is another unexpected pantry staple that can work wonders for your plant cuttings. We are talking about apple cider vinegar. Now, you have to be extremely careful with this one, but when used correctly, it is a game changer. Apple cider vinegar contains over 30 trace minerals that are incredibly beneficial for plant growth. It also slightly lowers the pH of your water, which many tropical houseplants absolutely love. The rule here is extreme dilution. You only need 1 tiny teaspoon of apple cider vinegar in an entire gallon of water. Let me give you a clear example of how this helps. Say you are trying to root a stubborn piece of philodendron, and your tap water is very hard and alkaline. The cutting just sits there for weeks doing nothing. By using this highly diluted vinegar solution, you neutralize the hard water minerals and create a slightly acidic environment. Suddenly, the philodendron feels like it is back in the jungle rains, and the roots start popping out from the nodes. It is vital to debunk the idea that vinegar is a weed killer. Yes, pure, strong vinegar will burn plants, but in microscopic doses, it is a potent mineral fertilizer and a water conditioner. It gently softens the outer layer of the stem, making it much easier for the new root nodes to burst through the plant's skin. Just remember the golden rule: less is always more. Let us talk about creating the perfect microclimate. You can use all the secret ingredients in the world, but if your cutting dries out, it is game over. Before a cutting has roots, it has absolutely no way to drink up water to replace the moisture it loses through its leaves. This is where the magic of the humidity dome comes into play. You do not need an expensive greenhouse setup to achieve this. A simple, clear plastic Ziploc bag works wonders. Let me explain this with a practical illustration. Imagine you take a cutting from a humidity-loving plant, like a calathea or a begonia. If you leave it sitting on your kitchen counter, the dry indoor air will suck the moisture right out of the leaves. They will turn crispy and fall off. But if you place a clear plastic bag gently over the top of the cutting and its pot, you trap all that escaping moisture. The water transpires from the leaves, hits the inside of the bag, and drips right back down. You have created a self-watering high-humidity terrarium. It is a closed-loop system that keeps the cutting perfectly hydrated while it takes its time to build a root system. One myth to avoid here is sealing the bag completely shut for weeks. Plants still need fresh air to prevent mold. So, just poke a few small holes in the bag or take it off for 10 minutes every couple of days to let the cutting breathe. Another completely invisible factor that dictates how fast your cutting's root is temperature. We often assume that room temperature is perfectly fine for everything, but roots are born in the warm earth. Cold water or cold, damp soil will absolutely stop root development dead in its tracks. If you want explosive, instant root growth, you need to provide gentle, consistent bottom heat. Let us visualize this. Imagine it is the middle of winter, and you are trying to propagate some expensive indoor tropicals on a chilly windowsill. The water in the glass is freezing cold. The plant goes into total dormancy to survive. It will not spend energy making roots. Now, imagine you take that same glass and place it on a specially designed seedling heat mat that keeps the bottom consistently warm. The warm water signals to the plant that spring has arrived. The metabolic rate increases, cell division speeds up, and roots shoot out rapidly. The heat literally cooks up the root growth. The biggest myth is that bright sunlight provides enough heat. A windowsill might be sunny, but the glass can be freezing cold against the propagation jar. By focusing on warming the water or the soil from underneath, you bypass the ambient room temperature entirely. It is one of the most reliable ways to guarantee success, no matter what season it is outside. Let us shed some light on the subject of illumination. How much sun does a cutting actually need? This is where many eager plant parents make a fatal mistake. The common thought process is that plants need massive amounts of direct sun to grow fast. So, people put their fragile, rootless cuttings right into a blazing south-facing window. This is a huge myth and a recipe for disaster. Let us look at a real-world example. You take a beautiful, expensive cutting of a variegated monstera. You want it to grow fast, so you bake it in the sun. Because the cutting has no roots, it cannot absorb water fast enough to cool its leaves down. The intense sun simply scorches the foliage, turning your prized cutting into a crispy brown mess. What a cutting actually needs is bright, indirect light. Think about the dappled shade on a jungle floor. The plant needs just enough light to perform basic photosynthesis and generate the energy required to push out roots, but not so much light that it becomes heat-stressed. Putting your propagation jars a few feet away from a bright window or behind a sheer curtain is the absolute sweet spot. The energy goes down into root production rather than fighting off dehydration. So save the direct sunshine for your fully established plants. Your delicate cuttings will thank you for the gentle shade. So, how do we bring all of these incredible secrets together to create the ultimate foolproof propagation protocol? It is all about combining these methods in a balanced way. You do not need to use every single trick at once, but layering a few of them guarantees success. Let us build the ultimate master recipe for rooting a cutting. First, you take your clean, sharp cut. Second, you dip the wound in fresh aloe vera gel and a light dusting of cinnamon to protect it from rot. Third, you prepare a glass of water that includes our secret ingredient, either a splash of homemade willow water or a dissolved aspirin tablet, to provide those essential rooting hormones. Fourth, you place the cutting in this powerful solution. Finally, you set the jar on a warm heat mat in bright, indirect light and maybe pop a clear plastic bag over the top if the air is extremely dry. If you follow this exact illustration, you are stacking all the odds completely in your favor. You are providing hormones, protection, warmth, and the perfect environment all at the same time. You will see thick, healthy roots forming in a fraction of the usual time. The days of rotting stems and endless waiting are over. By understanding the biology of the plant and using these simple, natural household items, you hold the power to multiply your plant collection infinitely for free. And there you have it, the ultimate turning point for your indoor garden. The biggest plot twist here is that the gardening industry wants you to believe propagation is difficult and requires highly specialized, expensive products. But as we have just discovered, nature has already provided the absolute best rooting hormones right in our own backyards and kitchens. From the antibacterial shield of honey and cinnamon to the hormone-rich magic of aloe vera, willow water, and even simple aspirin, you now have a complete arsenal of natural propagation tools. You understand the critical importance of warmth, indirect light, and oxygen. Your cuttings are no longer left to chance. They are primed for instant, explosive root growth. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today and diving into the fascinating science of plants. If you found these secrets helpful, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and leave a comment below. It really helps the channel grow. Now, I have a question for all of you. Which of these natural rooting methods are you going to try first on your next cutting? Let us start a discussion in the comment section below. Happy propagating, and I will see you in the next video.